Here at Flying Pigeon LA, we're a boutique retailer of China's famous Flying Pigeon bicycle, which has been in continuous production since the Cultural Revolution in China, actually a little bit before that. So in light of our emphasis on bicycles for transportation, which we do at our shop, we've invited two speakers tonight to talk about a vital transportation matter that's on the ballot this coming Tuesday, November 4th. That's Measure R, the MTA's proposed half-cent sales tax increase. In the Yes for R corner, we have Hank Fung, a licensed civil engineer and a graduate student. He's also a treasurer for the Southern California Transportation Association, right?
Southern California Transit Advocates.
There you go. All right, thank you so much. And so that's the Yes on R corner. And fighting out of the No on R corner is Randall Bustard Fleming, most famous recently for his input on the blog, thebusbench.com. But he also has been in the publishing industry for over 20 years. He's written, typeset, photographed, published, you name it. I read his bio, he's done it. So he's got quite a strong anti-R stance, and we're going to hear both of them tonight. It's going to run, where they're going to each get a chance to do an introduction. I've got a series of questions, one of which I got from a young boy selling candy on the street tonight, no joke. And each person will have 2 minutes to respond. And when it's wrapped up, we're going to screen a version of a Chinese film called Please Vote For Me about a democracy experiment in China. So to see how they do it, and since we're in a Chinese bicycle boutique, I thought it was only appropriate. All right, so with no further ado, we'll get started. All right, I've got to flip a coin, which I've got. Oh man!
Does anybody have
I just saw it. You just had it on.
I'll have a bus token. Let's use that.
Since perfect. All right.
You get LA.
Okay. You get LA and you get one. That's a tail. Oh, I'm sorry. That's right. So it's LA. LA came up, and that's
All right.
Okay.
Mr. Hank. All right, cool. There you go. So,
All right.
Hank, you get to go first with the opening remarks, and you got 5 minutes to do it, and then we'll move on to the questions.
Okay, thanks for joining us here. You know, this will be an interesting debate. We're talking about Measure R, which is let's just go over briefly what Measure R is. It's a half-cent sales tax measure for transportation on the ballot. That'll be on the ballot this November, the 4th, Tuesday, next Tuesday, in fact. And basically, Measure R increases the sales tax in most of LA County from 8.25% to 8.75%. So basically, the LA Economic Development Corporation believes that it will cost the average person about $25 a year. I myself, even though I support it, I think that's a little understated because of what people buy and that sort of thing, and it's overcounting the amount of things that businesses buy. So I think the average person will pay about $50 a year, or about $1 a week for better transportation. You're going to have, with Measure R, you're going to finish what the long-range plan. MTA has a long-range planning process, and they've identified various rail lines that need to be completed, various highway projects that need to be completed, and also needs in terms of operations and purchasing new buses, new trains, that sort of thing. So Measure R will be used for those things. It'll be used for local street improvements. What you have is that Measure R will give 15% of every dollar that comes in will go straight to local streets. It will help fill our potholes. It will help put bike lanes. It will put handicap ramps on our sidewalks. There's a lot of unmet needs on our local streets that Measure R will help provide. By providing a rail service and by unclogging some of these bottlenecks, 75% of Southern Californians, residents of Los Angeles County, drive to work in their single occupant vehicle. So what we're doing is we're giving them alternatives to driving alone, such as new carpool lanes, such as rail, parking structures for train lines, that sort of thing. That's what a Measure R will affect. What Measure R will do also to alleviate the concerns of poorer people and working class people that the sales tax will have, it will keep bus fares, it will freeze bus fares for a year for everybody. So LA's bus fare is $1.25, and it's some of the lowest bus fare in the country right now. And it will stay at $1.25 until 2010. And for senior citizens, the disabled, it's going to freeze the bus fare until 2013. And that means that, for example, you know, my dad, who's 65 years old, he can ride a bus for a quarter, 16 hours a day and all day on weekends for just 25 cents. And, you know, that will really help out our seniors, because a lot of our seniors shouldn't be driving. And therefore, you know, with this senior rate, and it will help improve traffic, and it will give seniors and disabled options other than having to drive. It will provide alternatives to high gas prices, stimulate the local economy, create jobs, because of course public works projects create lots of jobs. They create jobs in terms of construction and engineering. Construction is a high source of blue-collar jobs. You have a lot of people, skilled construction workers, that are no longer employed because of this poor economy. And a lot of these Measure R projects are ready to go. They're in the planning stages, and they will be ready to be built within the next 2 to 3 years. You have grade separations that can be built in the next couple years. You have, you know, the Foothill Gold Line will be funded partially with Measure R, and now that's ready to go. And you have a lot of things that will help stimulate this economy, like FDR did, you know, in the 30s with WPA. It's going to stimulate our economy so we can help get out of this recession and move forward and have a more robust economy as everything grows and everything as our economy, you know, recovers from this recession. So that's basically what Measure R is going to do. It's something that I hope you folks support, because we need it. You know, LA is the most congested metropolitan area in the country. We do have already 1% going to transportation, but it's not enough. And our gas tax is not high enough for drivers. I think our gas tax is not, the revenue is not enough to maintain our roads. Our transit fares, we need to keep them low for working class people, seniors, and the disabled. And this is a good balance by using a sales tax to help keep fares low, increase service for everybody, and unclog some of these bottlenecks that are easy to fix if only we had the money. And I thank you again for coming.
Thank you very much. All right. Mr. Bustard Fleming, let's hear it. Yes on R?
Good evening, and thank you for coming out. I obviously am opposing Measure R, and primarily it's because of the mismanagement that Metro and the MTA, and prior to that, RTD, and various other agency names over the last several decades have proven to mismanage money in a phenomenal fashion. A few of the fiascos that have been very recent have been $1 and $1 million for brochures, which I find is a conflict of interest, because a public agency using that much money in order to try to get even more money is rather questionable. Annually, they expend about $27 million for free towing services for motorists, for private motorists. That's quite a bit of money, and that's people whose cars break down on the freeways and the roads. And if those people cannot maintain their own private motor vehicles, why should people who don't have them and do use the bus system and the train system here in Los Angeles, why should they pay for it? $2 and $2 million for a developing fiasco that's with the transit view screens. These, if you've been on the Red Line, you will have seen these screens out there that are announcing the train times. Sometimes, because there are a number of hardware and system or software failures that have been occurring. And this is the third set of televisions, or I should say monitors, that that Metro has put up since 2000. They started off having a few experiments in 7th Street Metro. Then they moved to having red LED crawls. Now they're using these. And once again, these things are only about a year old. They spent $2 and $2 million, and they're already breaking down. That shows that they really don't. They keep changing, and they're just it's breaking down. It's something that they had set up. It was nice and simple, and in the meantime, they have taken away the reimbursement that they give to LADOT's Dash, which is only a half to $650,000 a year for people who use transfers, because they say that's just too much. And after all of that, that right there shows that there's something fishy. It's just not right. And of course we have what is the fiasco going on with AIG. AIG back in between late 1980s and about 2000, Metro, back then MTA, had sold a lot of their equipment to AIG for about $32 million. Now it's coming out that AIG, having been one of the banks that failed, it's going to cost a lot more. As far as some people are saying several hundred million. In fact, right now there's a bank in Belgium that wants, they're called KBC Group. They want 43 million this week right now from Metro. That's pretty much, it's almost the same amount that they paid, and they're only one of many. The fact that we've gone through this before as far as measures, 1926, there was a very similar political battle. 1930, there was another one. The 50s and 60s had a number of small skirmishes. 1968, and then again in 1980, which had the infamous Prop A that came to basically nothing. We got the blue line out of it, but it took 10 years, and the blue line is still a travesty. It still stops just like a regular car does. It takes an hour, which is about the same amount of time it takes to drive down to Long Beach along the freeway as well. And time and again, whoever is running Metro, no matter what the agency's name is, they have shown that they mismanage money. And I feel that with Measure R, all it's going to do is to make up, as you said, it's going to fill in potholes rather than develop new transit systems, new trains, or perhaps, not even maintain busways anymore. It's going to fill in the holes that AIG and past mismanagement has occurred. And a lot of it's under Roger Snowball. Roger Snowball being the CEO of Metro. And that is why I say no on Measure R.
All right. Okay, guys, so thank you very much for that. We're going to go to the question and answer phase now, just like on the presidential debates. I've got a few questions prepared for both speakers. Let's just go in the order that you guys started, if that's all right. I guess we can switch it up later on if it'll make more sense. The first question I have, this is from the young man I was telling you about who I bought a couple candy bars off of, who was walking down the street and happened to have a mind on him for transportation. He wanted to know if the proposed projects, the freeway expansions, the rail system expansions, and the bus operations, if they're going to actually be funded completely, the ones that are on the planned projects, if they're going to be funded completely with this money. So I figured we could start with Hank, and we'll move on around. You guys each have 2 minutes, so go ahead.
Okay, I tell the kid that it doesn't. It does not fund them completely, because Measure R, how much money is that actually generating per year? It's generating approximately $700 million for the first year. Over the life of the measure, the 30-year life of the measure, it'll generate about $40 billion, billion with a B. So the total cost of all of these projects is going to be about $70 billion. And the Bus Riders Union has made that point in their literature. Now, it's not going to fund everything, but what it will do, it will allow us to leverage these funds, these locally controlled funds, for federal and state money. For example, the Gold Line is going to need about $800 million, and Measure R is going to provide a good chunk of that, but the rest of it's going to need to come from federal and state funding. Measure R is going to give $735 million for a Gold Line, but to get the Gold Line all the way to Claremont is going to cost about $1 billion. So the rest of that money is going to be coming from federal sources. Now, this kind of leveraging is very common. You have school bonds that leverage funding from state and federal government. You have bonds for libraries that cities will tax themselves for libraries, and they'll leverage state grant funds. And so yes, are these projects going to be guaranteed to be completed? No. If the state or the federal government do not come through with their plans, if the federal government is cutting back and decides to cut out all transit capital projects completely, then no, that's not going to happen. But what it will do is help us get higher in the line, because the more money we bring to the table, the better we score with the federal and the state government, because there are a lot of projects out there. And the better we score, the more likely they are to actually get built.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Fong. All right, Mr. Fleming, your response or your comments on this map?
All right, I say that no, the freeways are, just as they have not been, there are several of them that are obviously sitting around. There's no Robert Moses here who's going to continue to cut through. Where they are is pretty much where they're going to stay. Moreover, I feel that no matter what, if Measure R passes, not much is going to occur. And that's exactly why I feel that Roger Schnobel and Mayor Tony V continue to say the things that they do in order to try to scare people into getting that, because they're going to be some of the primary beneficiaries of it. What they understand is something that people need to understand. We should raise the rates on buses. We should pay a good bit of that, because once strap hangers and bus riders have to pay higher fares, they will have control in such a way to where threatening a bus boycott is something that will keep these people in line. All they have to do is go up to Sacramento, get a few people to get on board, and they have that money and they can do whatever they want. They've shown that they do not care, and it goes all the way down the line that way. In order to get control of the very transit system that affects us on a day-to-day basis, and I have not owned a motor car in a very long time, I rely on it here, and I would like to see people stand up a little bit more, is to pay a little bit more. That's part of the price. You either don't get to work on time, or you pay a little bit more and make sure that you control it, and they will listen. The fact is, they're not going to do anything with the freeways. They're not going to do anything except fill some newly developing potholes that have always been there, and the surface is cracking. AIG, again, I bring it up. And we need to go ahead and say no to Measure R, because even though we're paying more for the fares, we will have that control, and that's why they're trying to scare us into voting for it. They will be the beneficiaries of it.
Can I respond to that?
We've got about, yeah, if you could make it very brief.
I'm finished.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Basically, you're saying higher fares will provide leverage, but what really happens is that higher fares don't do that. I mean, you have Valley Transit Authority in San Jose. Their fares are through the roof. And, you know, they're like $2 to get on the bus. And the riders there don't have any leverage. I mean, it's still a poor system. They're still spending money on useless light rail. Unlike Measure R, which actually gives you light rail that people will use, San Jose has worthless light rail. And the riders pay a lot, and they have no leverage. It's politician controlled. They'll be politician controlled either way, with Measure R, without Measure R. The riders, unfortunately, they just don't have political clout. And that's unfortunate, but it is the reality. And I think that with this project, you know, maybe we can get more middle class people to use transit. That's how you get people to buy into transit.
Okay, all right. You want to say?
I do want to respond to that.
Okay.
One thing, San Jose is it's a much smaller town than LA, and LA is a town. And the fact is, there's a far more restrictive economic strata there. There are a lot more primarily middle class people that can't afford that, unlike, say, New York. It's $2 there as well. However, people have a lot more say, and they do respond to the people there a lot more. I mean, Los Angeles is still developing. It has one subway. And even though some people may say purple, red line, whatever, that's only a matter of semantics. One subway, and they have a problem making it work. The customer service do not care, because I deal with them frequently. I've frequently dealt with Tom Horn, who is their manager, and a number of other people. The fact is, they know that they don't have to care about the strap hangers or the bus riders. They just have to go to Sacramento. I still feel that if we pay higher fares and there's less reliance on money that is obviously not going to be there because they're spending it elsewhere, they are going to listen. And on top of that, that money is not going, Measure R is not going to do anything. It simply isn't. There are too many holes developing. Around the same time that Measure R was being conceived, the AIG clause, the clause in the AIG contract with Metro was being understood. I don't think that that is a coincidence.
All right. It sounds like the AIG thing is going to overshadow much of our conversation tonight. It's, I think, is every other conversation at Metro probably. The next question I have for both of you, and this may seem a little bit, it's somewhat related to the proposed projects question. Why is there no, or allegedly no, or purportedly no money for the San Gabriel area of Los Angeles County? In Measure R, or why are the proposed projects not predominantly in the San Gabriel area? I guess, Hank, if you have anything you'd like to say about that?
Sure. I live in San Gabriel Valley, and I think that I support Measure R. My city councilman doesn't support it. The Valley Council of Governments don't support it. I think that Measure R does bring benefits to San Gabriel Valley. It will help us complete the Foothill Gold Line extension. Now, I don't particularly think the Gold Line extension is as good a project as, say, the West Side Subway or some of the other projects that are on the list on Measure R. Certainly, people in the San Gabriel Valley, they need to understand one thing, and that's is that people don't stay in their regions. You know, I live in the San Gabriel Valley. I go to the West Side to meet my friends, or I go to the West Side for a job interview. I go to Orange County to, you know, get my car serviced, that sort of thing. You know, we don't stay in our regions, so we need to direct funding to not just where people live, and that's what the San Gabriel Valley people say, is that, well, let's have everything per capita, so $1 for each person or whatever it is. But people leave their regions. They don't all stay at home. They don't all work in the same area. So Measure R gives the money to where the congestion is. And the other thing is that Measure R, it still does give funds to citizens. Every city gets money with Measure R, with the local return, the 15% that I mentioned for the potholes and sidewalks and that sort of thing. So therefore, I think that the Measure R will give money to San Gabriel Valley. It will give a lot of money to them. Will they get as much as they would if it was proportional? No, but your demand is not there, and we need to give it where the needs are. And if they would understand that, and it will help the entire region out, and that's important to get our economy competitive.
All right, thank you, Mr. Funk. All right, Mr. Fleming, a reason why there's no money for the San Gabriel area you can think of?
Well, I couldn't say why that reason is, but I do know that this has happened before. The Red Line only has 2 stops in the valley generally, and I would imagine that the same thing is going to happen again. The fact is, they're trying to develop the downtown area. They have tried that a number of times. Back before I went back to New York, the downtown area, they went through at least twice in the 1990s trying to develop it. And part of it had to do with transportation. They failed altogether. The real estate, everything. They're trying it again. They're trying to do what they can, and they only have so much money. That's part of why they're doing the Gold Line as it is. But even the Gold Line has been half-assed. It's a grade level, and they have tried numerous times to get something going through there. At one point, I should say several points, they wanted to have what are called Ls, electric trains, elevated. And several times it was always shot down because they said the aesthetic was unappealing. Obviously now what do we have? We have smog and we have nothing but freeway congestion. Personally, I think that's much uglier. It would be nice if Measure R were actually going to help bring this all together, like the 5 boroughs of New York, you know, but it's not. I don't feel that it is. I feel that, once again, mistakes from the past, from mismanagement of monies in the past, are simply going to be filled in. As stated earlier, it's just a bunch of potholes being filled in. I mean, we got a mayor out there who's more concerned with that and trying to find something on a state, if not a national level, than actually getting anything done. And he's complicit in trying to threaten everybody to vote for it. It's more money for him, it's more money for Roger Schnobel, it's more money for people at the top of Metro, but it's not going to be more money for, you know, keeping boots on the ground moving with buses and trains. They're going to be expansive. And as far as the Valley, unfortunately, I feel the Valley is once again going to get heavily shortchanged, even if Measure R passes. Promises are just not going to be met. So,
thank you very much, both of you, for your response. If anybody has Google Video in the San Gabriel Valley, hopefully they'll catch that exchange. All right, the next question I have is with regards to bus service, the strap hangers that you mentioned and the bus riders. What about bus service? Will it improve? Will it stay the same? Or will it get worse with Measure R? Do you have any views or opinions on that? And if we could switch it up this time, because we are with the bus hard, we'll let him go first, and Mr. Funk can go second, I guess. So take it away, Mr. Funk.
Okay. I think that even if Measure R passes, bus service will probably take a little bit of a hit. There are a lot of threats about how the bus service is going to be heavily attenuated if Measure R doesn't pass. But again, we're talking about people who lie to us, get paid by our money to lie to us daily in order to keep us assuaged and you know, keep us comfortable as, you know, they skate us over one line to the next. Even if Measure R passes, I don't feel that bus service is going to improve much. It simply isn't. They've had lots of chances, they've had lots of money, and they continue to screw it up. They had bus lanes on Wilshire for a little while, and now they don't. Those rapids move at the same pace as the local buses and the same pace as all the other traffic. In fact, probably one of the best buses is actually a municipal one. It's the Big Blue bus, number 10 from downtown. The 10 takes about 30 minutes to get all the way down there. I used to, when I first lived in downtown back in the 90s, I used to work at EMI on 26th Street in Colorado. It took me half an hour to get there in the morning, half an hour to get there at night. You take a Wilshire line, then as now, it's going to take you an hour and a half. You're going to be sitting there watching the same private motor vehicles as you move along. They've had ample chance. They've continued to not do anything. And if Measure R passes, I don't think they're going to do anything. They haven't spelled anything out. They're not going to recreate the bus line, the express bus lines again. They're not going to make service better. They're probably going to put a little bit of money into attempting to extend lines to the west side, maybe to the valley. But other than that, in about 10 years, everybody's going to forget, just like they forgot about the attempt in 1968, where the half-cent measure was shot down. In 1980, when Prop A, another half-cent measure, it did pass. And like I said, what we get? We got a blue line. And the only people taking the blue line are people who are probably just as frustrated that they have to take it. The seats are bad. It's very tight seating. It's not a very reliable service. It has a short line that can be very frustrating. It stops around Willow or somewhere. And like I said, at the beginning in downtown, Long Beach or Los Angeles, it stops with all the rest of the traffic at the lights when it's not running into things. I think an average of about 35 collisions a year, maybe more. It has more than any other train, commuter train in the U.S., and it has a much longer line. So,
all right, thank you very much for that, Mr. Fung. Do you have will the bus service improve, stay the same, or get better under Measure R?
I think the bus service will improve. It's not going to improve dramatically, to be quite honest, because there is something that Randall thinks is Metro scaring people. That's the structural deficit. There's a structural deficit of over $100 million over the next 10 years, about $2 billion in operating funds, and that's something that Measure R will help fill. And so it will maintain bus service as it is. Right now, if Measure R doesn't pass, we'll probably see 25 to 50 bus lines cut starting next June, if not earlier. Now, in terms of making it better, it will provide funds to not just Metro, but to the other operators that sometimes do a lot better job than Metro. For example, Big Blue Bus, Torrance, Foothill, Gardena, Antelope Valley, Santa Clarita Transit. They'll all get money. LADOT, they'll all get money with Measure R through what's called in the operating funds. There's a complicated formula that will divide up money, but basically it ensures that these municipal operators like Gardena, Torrance, Santa Monica, LADOT will get money and they'll make their service better. I think that most of your improvements with Measure R are going to be found, quite frankly, in the municipal operators, because the municipal operators will now have the funds to expand service. A lot of them are still running older buses. A lot of them are still having problems with capacity, with not enough space for their buses. So it'll give them some money to expand service in those areas which are served by municipal operators. And Metro will have some money too, and it will improve service. But I'll be quite honest, I won't expect something dramatic. You won't see buses, 24-hour buses everywhere with Measure R. But you will see Metro having service to meet the demand, because you do have lots of areas which have full buses, and Metro just can't fill that demand. And now Measure R, with that money, it will help alleviate some of that congestion on buses.
All right, thank you very much. Okay. Okay, so the next question I have to ask here has to do with the AIG leaseback deal. And the question is, in light of the AIG leaseback deal, is Measure R going to the projects proposed, or will the money for it, can it go to something else? And since we switched it up last time, we'll go back to Mr. Fung and see if he has anything to add to this. In favor of Measure R. Okay,
there are strict financial safeguards with Measure R. I know that people kind of poo-poo them, that the Metro Board can just change them at will, that we'll have cost overruns, that sort of thing, which could happen. I do concede that, but you have an actual bill, AB 2321, that actually spells out the minimum amounts each project on that list will get. And for example, you know, on this list here, let me just pull out my list. For example, you know, it promises, you know, a minimum. It actually says in the attachment, minimum amount going to operations, to East Side Light Rail, to East Side Gold Line, to Metro Rapid Ways, to the West Side Subway extension. There's $900 million minimum that's scheduled to go there. And all of this money, it's in the law, so yes, they could probably arrest Roger Snowball or whoever the CEO is for violating that if they don't spend X number of money on that project. And I think that the AIG thing is something that's of concern. It's something that's of high concern because, you know, AIG wasn't supposed to be bankrupt. You have one of the world's biggest insurance companies, and everybody thought that was a good idea to do the leaseback, and it turns out that, you know, the odds didn't work out. So what do? There's only a few things that you can do, and one of these is you have to find revenue. And I think Measure R will bring the revenue, and eventually, you know, AIG is kind of a short-term thing. I think that while it is, you know, many millions of dollars, it is a big hit. But we need to look long-term. We need to look in the next 30 years, and the 24 or 30 or 40 million dollars is going to be a blip in terms of your $2 billion structural deficit and in terms of your billions of dollars of needs. That Measure R will at least try and make a few steps. We'll get there halfway perhaps, but with the federal and state government's help, we'll get there more of the way. But we can't get that help from the feds and the state without Measure R because they won't give us projects without us putting money on the table.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Fleming. Mr. Fleming, your feelings about the leaseback deal with AIG is falling through and how it's going to affect Measure R, whether the projects in it are going to be completed as proposed?
Well, I feel that that was something that was impulsive on behalf of what was at that time the MTA, as we know them now, Metro. Obviously, that was not Roger Schnobel's fault because he was not CEO at that point. However, the fact that somebody did decide to do that and did do it over a long amount of time, like I said, the late 1980s to the early 2000s, is obviously a problem, especially for the fact that it took $85 billion to bail them out last month. And just very recently, several of their employees were busted down in Dana Point, partying to the tune of about $500,000 with some of that taxpayer bailout money. So that shows you the kind of people that Metro continues to work with. And the fact that, as quoted by one of the reports by Metro, that AIG is involved in 8 of our 10 deals with a total value of nearly $1 billion. That's a little bit scary. And there are quite a few things that I'm sure are going to come to light with respect to Metro's relation to AIG and probably a number of other financial agencies. I'm sure that we're probably not going to know all of it, but we're definitely going to feel the effects of it. And what else is going on out there, I really don't know, but I'm sure that they're doing all that they can to keep it down because, like I said, again, I feel that with Measure R, the fact that it came up about the same time that AIG was getting bailed out, and on top of that, there are a number of escape clauses that are there, even though they say that certain aspects are, certain bottom lines will be met at the same time, and I forget what it is because unfortunately I failed to bring my printout, but it is on that. There is an escape clause to say that it, owing to local agencies, local municipalities, it may or may not be met with those bottom lines as far as what is going to be attributed to these newly developed lines, whether bus or light rail. So who's to say what's going to happen? I think that the one question that none of the press has put to either Roger Schnobel nor to Mayor B is what will definitely happen if Measure R is passed. Everybody's saying what will not happen, or what will happen if Measure R is not passed. And of course, again, I feel that what they're doing is they're allowing for the mayor and for Metro to set up and threaten everybody with all of these doomsday scenarios, but they will not say what will definitely happen at the bottom line without any escape clauses if Measure R passes. And AIG is just one of those little surprises.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fleming. The next question I have is, it's going to sound a little silly, but who benefits most from Measure R. And you can interpret that any way you want. It could be a crazy conspiracy story. It could have to do with individual citizens in the area. But who really do you think would benefit most from Measure R? And let's start with Mr. Fung again with this question.
I think Measure R will benefit everybody in the county. I think that Measure R is something that everybody in the county needs to go somewhere, whether they walk on the sidewalk, whether they ride their bike, drive, take public transit. You know, we're not all, you know, on our brooms. This is Halloween. We're not in our brooms, you know, flying around in the air and not using any public infrastructure. Measure R will start to bring us some of these improvements that everybody needs. It will help our businesses because it will make Los Angeles County, it will maintain their competitiveness because we live in a global environment, and so transportation improvements are very important. You know, the ability for people to move around, for goods, for things to move around from the port. You know, Measure R, one of the things Measure R will do will give billions of dollars for grade separations for Alameda Quarter East, so trains won't block traffic and slow down buses, and people divide communities because the trains are dividing communities right now. Measure R will provide money to build bridges over roads so that they won't do that anymore. You'll have something for everybody basically, and there will be some benefits will accrue to certain people. I mean, the West Side will probably benefit more from Measure R, but the West Side has most of the traffic. Construction companies and engineers will probably benefit from Measure R, and I'll agree to that. But construction companies, you know, they provide a lot of our high-paying blue-collar jobs. They keep you know, people with good skills, but maybe not a lot of education employed with good paying blue collar jobs, and these are the people that benefit from Measure R. You benefit, I benefit, everybody benefits. Yes, some people will benefit more than others, but on the other hand, they are the ones that are paying more right now, and so they should benefit a little bit better, a little bit more.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Fung. Mr. Fleming,
well, the first person who benefited from Measure R should have been me, because I am a career graphic designer, typographer, and all of that. And whoever printed this, whoever designed this, certainly benefited. $1 in $1 million, right there. As for who's going to benefit from it, I still don't feel that it's going to be people such as myself that rely on public transit in Los Angeles. I feel, again, as I stated earlier, I feel that it's going to be people at the top, such as Roger Snowball, who makes about $300,000 a year, plus he gets allowances for private motor vehicle and housing. I would imagine that whoever happens to be on the transportation board, Wendy Grell, Tony V, if he's still around, if he's not chasing after Arnold, or even a more national position, is probably going to benefit. But as far as anybody truly doing it, I think it will, at the very, very best, it will barely maintain what little is going on here. If you've been to cities where they have transit, and I keep bringing up New York simply because being a former New Yorker, I'm very familiar with the system there. And their transit system, their subway system is well over 100 years old. Los Angeles, for well over 100 years now, has been trying to get something what they have now, and it's still pathetic, both in the bus and the train. I really wish it were a bit wider, a bit better, and that they brought it along. I still feel that Measure R is not going to benefit anybody except a few people who are going to be the ones doing this, who are getting it onto the ballot if they get it voted through.
All right, thank you both very much for that. All right, I've got one question. This is, again, a little bit more regional since we're on the eastern portion of Los Angeles. It has to do with the 710 expansion. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that there is money in Measure R set aside for the 710 expansion, or in the strategic plan for the MTA.
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, and so the question I had, because we're so close to lovely South Pasadena, is the money for the 710 expansion through South Pasadena going to waste, or is it a good thing to put into the MTA's budget and fund through Measure R? And if we could start with Mr. Fleming this time, and Mr. Fung go next, so take it away, Mr. Fleming. Thank you.
The forces in South Pasadena are well entrenched. They've been around for a while. 710 is never going to extend any farther than it is. You could resurrect Robert Moses and give him the biggest bulldozer on earth, and I'm telling you, he's not going to split that neighborhood. Enough said.
Okay, I mean, to respond to that, I think the 710 freeway, I mean, I drive. I don't know how many people here drive. 75% of Angelinos drive to work. I drive and I work around where the 710 is, and, you know, I see the traffic. I think that some of the money, it will go to the 710 tunnel. I mean, it's going to be a tunnel, actually. It's not going to surface in South Pasadena. You're going to see towers, vent towers, and that is a legitimate concern that does need to be mitigated. We do need to make sure that the air spewing out of that tunnels is at least, you know, to a decent standard and somewhat breathable. And I do agree with that. But, you know, the 710 tunnel is not going to get built with Measure R. It's a down payment on public-private partnership. You're going to have to pay a toll to use the 710 tunnel. That's almost a given. And it'll probably be congestion priced, meaning that it will cost more to use the tunnel during rush hour than it is during other parts of the day. Will the 710 tunnel get built? I don't know. It really is up to the people of the region and the people of South Pasadena, because the people of South Pasadena are suffering in that traffic. And unfortunately, there is no real other mitigation. I mean, you don't want to widen Fair Oaks and Fremont. You have a gold line, which is helpful, but it's not, it doesn't go where some people need to go. You could put bike lanes and stuff like that, but that's not going to accommodate all those people on those streets. So I think regionally the 710 tunnel needs to be built, and that's why Measure R is funding the 710 tunnel. Whether it will get built, I don't know.
All right, thank you both. There's just two more questions. They're a little bit more broad in scope. The second to last question is, are the projects that Measure R funds, are they the right projects? And you can put that in bunny ear quotes or not, but do you think they are the right projects? And if we could start with Mr. Fleming and we'll finish with Mr. Fung.
Well, I would say if those were to come to fruition, if Measure R is passed, I would say yes, because like I said, it's obviously something that's going to be at a creep. Build out toward the west side, build out toward the valley. The valley has several freeways that lead into downtown as well as other places, Orange County and so forth. They have a number of them, the 210, the 10. I could be a little bit liberal even saying, you know, out to the 15 and all of that. It has a lot more. The west side has pretty much nothing. It has that one little freeway that's overwhelmed. So start with that, relieve that congestion, and then go to that, if that were to occur. And I would have to say that that is a very big if. That's pretty much all I have to say on that. Because like I said, I'm not very confident in it working out.
All right, Mr. Fung, are the projects Measure R funding, are they the right projects?
I think they're the right projects because they've been vetted through a long-range transportation planning process. You know, the Metro had meetings a few months ago all over the county, taking input from people, what they wanted, what they didn't want. They came up with these project ideas. Some of these project ideas come from decades. You know, the Wilshire Subway has been an idea for decades. Gold Line was an idea since the Foothill Gold Line is an idea that dates back to the early 80s. You know, these are projects that have been around for a while, but Metro staff has done, in my opinion, they've done a decent job of scoring them, of doing the appropriate cost-benefit analysis, and they've even run some of these through the federal government. For example, the federal government said that the Foothill Gold Line wasn't exactly a great project, so Metro staff, that's why they ranked it lower on their list. These projects are necessary, and I believe they're the right projects because they're the ones that can be built in a reasonable amount of time. They've already started a planning process. Some of them have already completed engineering plans and just need to be accelerated, like the I-5 gap closure between the 605 and the Orange County line. So these projects are, I think these projects definitely, I would agree, they are the right projects.
All right, this is the last question, and you guys can close this up if you want. If you want to have a closing remarks, you can do that as well.
Yeah, we'll have closing statement time.
Okay, cool.
Sum it up.
All right, so this is the last question I have to ask, and it is why now? And can this wait? As you both know, we have, at least in the news, we have an economic crisis and a war, multiple wars going on. You can name all kinds of things. all kinds of local things as well going on. So can Measure R wait, and why is it important to do this now as opposed to next year on the ballot measure? If we can start with Mr. Fung, and we'll close with Mr. Fleming.
I think that Measure R is the right time. This is the right time because we unfortunately are in an economic crisis, but we need to jumpstart our economy. And one way to do that is through public works spending that will have long-term benefits, such as Measure R. I think that 2008 is the right year because you have a very strongly Democratic year. This is going to be a huge election with millions of people that would normally not turn out in an election. So whether or not you vote yes or no on Measure R, I think that the voting, the percentage that comes out of it will definitely be a fair representation of the population because you have such a high voter turnout. I think that if you wait until 2009 or 2010, off-year elections traditionally are more conservative and more likely to reject taxes. There is a 2/3 hurdle for Measure R, and that is going to be very difficult for it to overcome. But I believe that it can be overcome with people who read the information. Yes, some of it is paid for by Metro, like that brochure, but also information, a sample ballot, information on the ballot itself, the descriptions of the projects and what it will do. I believe that people will make the right choice, and this is the time to do it because we need to get started. We need to, we've waited in congestion for so long, and we can't wait another year, 2 years, 4 years. It's just not going to work.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fleming.
What else can I say to add to that? I feel that a lot of that is actually rather vague, and that's part of the problem that's going to allow Measure R to give money to people who are a few people who are going to benefit. Rather than giving it to the projects that it claims rather vaguely to support, and I really want people to vote against it because I feel that if you vote for it, you're going to find that you're going to be disappointed yet again and again, and this will be the third time essentially that pretty much nothing will happen. We might get one line out of it, and it's going to go to some people who are going to continue to drive, unfortunately. The gold line was a really good idea. Unfortunately, too few people use it, and too many times does it continue to be hit by people who should be using it in vehicles, such as the one woman who set the one engineer on fire and couldn't even bring herself to apologize on live TV because she was too much in a hurry up and get to work. So things such as that, unfortunately, and I'm sorry to get off the topic of that, but with Measure R, unfortunately, I don't feel that it's going to work out. The money is going to be mismanaged once again, if not make up for past mistakes that are coming to the forefront. And all I can say is, please don't vote on Measure R. It will force the people who are sitting there comfortably to actually get up and work.
All right, thank you both very much. I guess I give you each 2 minutes to close everything up, summarize, if you will, any views you have, and kind of make your final pitch to voters. This will go online very soon, so let's start with Mr. Fung, if that's all right. Okay, and then we'll close Mr. Fleming, and thank you both very much. So your closing remarks.
Okay, my closing argument is that we need to do something now about traffic. Yes, we have passed sales tax measures in 1980 and 1990. They've done a lot, actually. I mean, yes, the blue line was, he said that the blue line was the only thing that was done in the 1980 one. No, it didn't. I mean, no, that wasn't. I mean, it lowered bus fares. It increased service in the San Fernando and San Gabriel valleys. It did a lot. And this measure will do a lot. I think that now is the time to do it because we are in an economic crisis. It will cost people some money, about $1 a week, 50 cents to $1 a week, depending on who you believe. But it's something that, you're sitting in traffic and if you're a transit rider, you're not getting to where you need to be going because you're either in traffic or the service isn't there, or you're standing on crowded buses because there's not enough service on some routes. I think this is something that will happen. This is something that we can alleviate these things. It doesn't cost that much money. Metro is known for its poor management. Unfortunately, we have the Hollywood subway and that sort of thing. But I think that there's enough eyes watching Metro right now that we will start to see Metro shape up. And And with more money, yes, I know, it's like you're giving them more money and they really haven't done much, but in reality they have. And with more middle class people buying into the transit system, and with Measure R, we'll get more rail, more buses, more freeways, that sort of thing, more freeway bottlenecks. I mean, we're not going to see more freeways, as Randall said, but we're going to see bottlenecks, decongestion, that sort of thing. People will buy into it, and people will watch it. And I think that Metro has turned a corner. They were named Best Transit System a couple years ago by the APTA, American Public Transportation Association, and I think that Measure R, we're watching, and everybody's watching, but I think Metro will deliver those promises that they've made, and there are a lot of them, but they will.
Thank you, Mr. Fung. Mr. Fleming?
Well, I want to say, for one thing, that there is an adage about judging a person not so much when they are winning, because of course everybody's charitable at that time, but when they are losing. Right now, Metro is losing, and I feel that they are behaving in such a way that's indicative of desperation. There are threats of how bad it will be, as if it's not bad enough already. Coming down to that point, I would have to say that just like making men rape, being a high priority, were they eligible to get pregnant, so too would Metro be far more efficient if people such as Roger Schnobel were forced to ride the very trains that they're always promoting. And that's all I have to say at this point. I don't think that Measure R is going to help much, except to make up for past mistakes.
Wow, that was really fast. All right.
Vote no on Measure R.
All right, thank you guys both for coming out here tonight. Thank you everybody for making it, and online, I hope you guys are able to check this video out and make a decision very soon. Again, thank you very much for coming to Flying Pigeon LA Bike Shop. We have a dim sum ride coming up this Sunday if you want to take a free spin around the block on one of our bikes, take it for a test ride. Come on by the Flying Pigeon Shop any Sunday at 10 a.m. and have a little urban adventure with us. So thank you guys very much for joining us, and I guess we'll find out on Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, what the results are. So thanks again. Give these guys a round of applause.